I'm gonna cut right here. There's a cut right here. I'm redoing the answer. Future Grant.
Hey everybody, I enjoy my Trevor Ford, who has worked with Twitter and Shipped, and now focusing on Valiant, working with social media properties, garnering 100 million impressions a month for brands he works with as a social media manager. Trevor, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Hello.
Let's just dive into it. I feel like as designers, it's very easy for us to create things and post it, but sometimes there's a missing link in regard to what's the best way to get it out there, the best platforms, and so forth. So I'd love to kind of dive in and discuss first off, what platforms do you think in general people just need to always kind of keep in their tool belt?
Well, up until about 2 days ago, we're doing this interview in January. My answer would have been very obvious. TikTok is the go-to, but as of right now, it's gone. So your answer right now is there's not a best answer for everyone. Everyone has a platform that their natural talents are going to fit better on. If you can type out a witty retort in the span of 4 seconds, X, Twitter is going to be your go-to. If you are a visual mastermind and can actually manage to cut through the chafe of a meta algorithm, then Instagram may be best suited for you. Really, it depends on where you're building your initial strategy on where you need to focus your attempts. The one big thing that you should recommend for everybody is that you don't need to be on every platform. You may need to have a profile on every platform, but your efforts are much better spent being prioritized on a main one than spread half-assed across 4 or 5. The amount of brands, especially that I've seen that have a TikTok and Instagram, Threads, YouTube Shorts, Facebook, everything. And then instead of building one network up to what it could be, they garner a fraction of what their content is worth because they don't have the time to properly distribute it through that many channels. It's time consuming. So you need to pick one and focus on it.
Do you recommend doing like the 80-20 rule where let's say you are fresh, you don't know, you're trying to post your art and you're like, okay, I think these 4 platforms are gonna be good. And then you find that one of them is performing a lot better than the others. Do you recommend doing an 80-20 rule where you're putting 80% of your efforts inside one platform doing well, 20% to the others not doing well? Or do you recommend just cutting those lower performing platforms off?
I've always taken a much more dramatic approach to those kind of rules than I think is maybe industry standard. If I have a platform that is underperforming, I will completely cut it. Last year, we launched a Pinterest for the brand I work on, The Gamer. It did decently. We started hitting around 5 million impressions a month, around 400,000 engagements. So decent, but compared to the numbers that we were hitting on other platforms, where Facebook we hit 50 million per week with 200,000 engagements per week, which is quadruple the amount in a quarter of the time, it wasn't worth my personal efforts to continue the efforts on Pinterest. So I redoubled on Facebook and we've increased those numbers pretty exponentially since then. Pinterest died out. I am a solo effort at my job, so I don't have the time to distribute across 7 or 8 platforms like I'm talking about for designers right here. So I made the choice and it did pay off. If I had doubled down on Pinterest, would it have worked? Maybe. Maybe it would have died out. Maybe I plateaued. It's hard to know. So it's almost a gut feeling of if the growth is slower than you want after putting in the proper amount of work. Usually I give it 1 month. That's my bar for testing out a new social platform. And if I don't see the amount of growth and engagement that I want from that point, I do not slowly thread it out. I just cut it. It's done. No reason for you to put in the efforts if you're not seeing the results you want.
Let's say I'm creating designs, I'm doing mock-ups, things like that. And let's say it's a corporate design work. And I really want to post to somewhere that I think is going to perform. Obviously, there's experimentation that has to happen as well. But is there a platform that you feel like when it comes to graphics that visually, it's just a better place to be?
I don't think the platforms are unique enough now in how they're presented for there to be a solid answer to that. The given is Instagram. It's graphics focused, it's graphics driven. But since every platform is almost exclusively short form video biased in their algorithm, the issue is not going to be whether your work fits the platform, it's going to be you being able to present your work in a way that works on the current way the platform distributes content. So if you have designs that you're working on and you're just posting static graphics, I don't think that works on any platform right now, unless your work is just such a cut above the standard. But to really cut through the chafe, you need not only solid work or great work, you need a unique presentation. There are millions of people trying to get eyes on their work, so the most key aspect you can have is how it's presented, not the actual work.
Makes sense. Do dimensions matter? Me posting 1080 by 1920 vertical post on Instagram, is that going to be treated differently than posting a 1920 by 1080 horizontal post on Instagram that, let's just say it's a video?
On video specifically, or?
Yeah, let's say for video specifically.
Yes. Yeah. If you post a regular video on Instagram that is not fed into the Reels content on your profile, it will not experience nearly the reach that you'll get in 80 by 1920 aspect ratio video. I cannot stress enough how much these short form videos are pushed in the algorithm. As people have known for, it's been 3 years of this. TikTok really kind of changed the game, and Meta is still trying to catch up. So if you want to get your content out there, as painful as it is, short form videos are a must.
Let's say that I'm doing a static graphic, and now I'm hearing that, okay, if I post on Instagram, I'm basically shooting myself in the foot with the algorithm when it comes to not being a video. But let's say, I say, hey, I'm going to make a BTS video. I'm going to make a video about how I made this graphic or something like that. Do you have any recommendations on how to really streamline that process, since the idea is probably to just not worry as much about the BTS video and try to get to the next project, but we still need to post something?
I don't think there's a coverall answer to that. With how many different ways there are to make short form videos now, the biggest advice you can give for that is that not every video needs to be perfect. The best thing you can do is post. Don't spend 4 weeks creating a 95% effort video when you could spend 4 weeks creating 80% effort videos that'll probably get the same amount of engagement. Consistent posting is more important than perfect posting, is what I'm trying to say.
On that note, let's take X, for example. Let's say I want to post my work on X. How often should I be posting those videos then? Those BTS videos, those time-lapse videos, things like that?
So Twitter is kind of the outlier here. The key on X is not so much short-form video. It's the outlier in algorithm. Videos do still have reach. There's no reason not to post them. But the 1080 by 1920 is not nearly as useful on X. The biggest thing you'll want to do on X, Twitter, is get involved in the conversation. And it pains me to say that because it sounds like marketing speak, but it's what we talked about when I worked at Twitter every single day. People want to talk. The hardest part is figuring out how to pivot the conversation to the content you're creating. There's a few ways you can do that you've probably seen if you're on the platform at all on any kind of regular basis. Clever quote tweets are one of the most powerful tools you can have. Discussion questions get posted. Instead of replying, quote it with a graphic. That gets more reach in the algorithm, more views to your followers, and usually more engagement, assuming the content you're posting with that quote tweet is good. Threads are also a powerful tool because the algorithm boosts replies almost like cumulatively. The more you reply to yourself, the more the post gets boosted in the algorithm. And people love being told stories. And that's what threads are for. And then, of course, replying to people discussing in your topic. So I said that you need to pivot the conversation to your content. That's not 100% of the time the case. Maybe 15-20% of the time you should be presenting your content on X. The other percentage of the time, just get involved in the conversation. Input on conversations, replies, because if everything is, hey, look at this picture I made, no one likes to be sold anything, and constantly posting content is selling something.
I've seen on X a couple times where someone will quote tweet something and it doesn't really have a lot of relevance to them being a designer or anything like that, but it'll catch a lot of traction. And then what will happen is they'll reply to their own quote once it caught traction and basically link to their design work, things like that, and try to get people in that way. So I challenge people who do just kind of post things, and even if it does get numbers, to also think of the way of like, there are strategies out there around not just constantly posting your videos, constantly posting BTSs, things like that. Like you mentioned, sometimes it's just about getting involved in the conversation somehow.
Be interesting first before you post your content is what it comes down to. If people don't care what you have to say, they don't care about the videos you're going to make. You need to prove that you have something worthwhile to say before you start sharing content on X.
So I feel like for some platforms, like we could take Instagram, for example, where it can feel very pay to play. Do you feel like people still have to pay to play on those kind of platforms, or do you feel like there's ways to where they can just post organically if they don't have budgets for, boosting their own posts and things like that to still get traction?
Instagram, if you are doing entirely organic posting now, is going to be extremely slow unless you catch a break with a viral reel or something of that sort. You can still experience growth. I've seen several brands do it. I've seen several creators do it. The trick is, again, going to be just, especially on Instagram, where people are worried about the aesthetic of a profile, things of that nature, consistent posting and consistent posting in the same style. You can't just drop lifestyle pictures and then an art reel, things of that nature, if you're really wanting to accelerate growth. You can't do that, obviously. It's your profile. Do what you want to do with it. But the more people can come to expect the same content from you, the more likely they are to engage and follow. The biggest thing you can do on Instagram to remain relevant in the algorithm, though, is similar to X. Meta likes people to stay on their platform. So whenever you post, or even when you don't post, when you open the app, go to creators relevant to you on your For You page with content relevant to you, and just get involved. You need to be commenting, sharing on your story, reacting, liking, all kinds of content. Because while the algorithm is learning what you like, it's a bit of a mirror, because it's also going to share the content that you post to a similar audience. And if you don't engage at all, it doesn't know who to push your content to. It's a much, much more inferior version of the TikTok algo, but it does kind of learn in a similar way.
Let's pivot a little bit and let's talk about profile optimization, because I've seen at times where someone may have really just great looking work on their Instagram and so forth, but also I'll look at their profile and I'm like, there's no links for me to go see more of the work. There's no website. There's nothing there. What is, in your opinion, the best practice? If I was a designer and I'm setting up an Instagram profile, what does my profile need to look like at the end of the day?
So I don't know how good my information will be on that, because I don't have personal experience reaching out to designers specifically, or what someone looking for a designer would need in a profile. But I can approach it from when I run influencer collaborations and what I'm looking for there. The biggest thing you'll need is a portfolio link to previous work. So for influencers, I want to see what they've posted in the past, what brands they've worked with, things of that nature. I need a point of contact, whether that's email or you have a message me link that goes to your email because you don't want your email to be public. Honestly, that's really about the extent of what I need. Different platforms are going to have different needs to optimize your profile, but none of them really affect reach at this point. So as long as you have history of work and a way to contact you, and I know that sounds super basic, but you would be amazed the amount of influencers that I try to reach out to for a contract or for some UGC, which is user-generated content for brand contracts to remain more authentic for content, and they just don't have an email. And you can DM them, but if these are influencers of any scale, they're getting 50, 100 messages a day, it's going to get lost. So you need to have those two things for the cores, I would say.
For profile pictures, do you have any tips and tricks? Like what makes a good profile picture when it comes to like standing out, if you see someone in the feed, things like that?
As long as it's visually unique, they're not as important as they used to be. The content is much more important. The biggest thing for profile picture is once you get one that you think really condenses your profile into a picture, stick with it for a while. You want people to start associating your content with that profile picture, but it's not, in the grand scheme of social strategy, not a huge deal unless you're using it as a logo on your work or things of that nature.
I think Facebook at this point is pretty much a graveyard. Is that fair to say?
Outside of like large brands, yeah, and I don't think any designers you're working with there. I don't think it's a place for designers. There's a lot of conversations happening, but the biggest strength of Facebook is groups and conversations, not really a place to share design work, or any kind of work, honestly.
For anybody who is interested in putting their face more on video when they're showcasing their work, whether it be BTS, time lapses, whatever, or maybe they just want to talk about tips and tricks that they learned in After Effects, things like that. Do you have any tips for getting comfortable on camera?
Specifically on camera or with video content overall?
Let's start with being on camera. Let's say you want to be on camera and showing your face a little bit more, building personal branding.
The way I did it when I first started making short form videos, like 5 years ago, was I almost did exposure therapy. You can do the same thing with voiceover work. Most people hate hearing themselves. They hate seeing themselves on video. And the only way to get over it is to do it. So do things on camera that you think you wouldn't be comfortable with people seeing you do on camera, and then watch it repeatedly. So to become more comfortable presenting on camera or even off camera presenting your work, there's two things. You need to be confident in the ideas you are presenting, whether it's your work, which you're going to know 100% obviously, or well-researched topics that you know in depth. It's very obvious when you're speaking on video or you're making content, if you're speaking on things that you don't know about through body language, subtle cues, things of that nature. The other thing is going to be the actual physical act of getting comfortable on camera, if that is the kind of content you're going to be creating. And there's no trick for that. There's no cheat code. There's no little hack of just suddenly being good on camera. You need to just do it. It's almost a form of exposure therapy, where the more and more and more you see yourself on camera, the more and more comfortable you are going to be with it. I hear it from a lot of my colleagues and friends who have done, especially like voiceover work in the past, is the most similar. Most people hate hearing themselves recorded, but the more you listen to it, the more comfortable you get with it. Grant has done 20 of these interviews by this point. I'm sure he doesn't mind hearing the sound of his own voice anymore, if he ever did in the first place. But you need to get comfortable with your own presentation. And it will affect the kind of reach your content gets. Someone timidly presenting their idea is going to get a lot less reach, or almost no reach, compared to someone confidently speaking on an idea. You'll see it in the TikTok videos. The ones that get popular are people saying, "Hey, come here. I have a problem." Not the person holding it at a stationary angle and timidly saying, "Can we talk about things of that?" So, as cliche as it is, what it comes down to is just confidence on camera. And the only way to build that is to do it.
Let's say we're talking about someone who is, they're not super confident in getting on camera. They don't want to put their face on camera. Maybe they're a VTuber. Maybe they have a virtual persona and they just want to stick behind that and they don't want to show themselves. Do you have any, tips, tricks there?
Yes. If you're not going to be presenting your face on camera, which for most videos is the visual hook to keep interest, you need to understand the art of cuts, visual interest content, which most people that are going to be listening to this are designers, so you probably know better than I do. But the biggest way to keep interest in a video is a face. So you need a way to keep interest in the faceless content. A lot of that is going to be for animations, a lot of cuts for BTS videos. TikTok especially loves jump cuts. The general rule for a short form video, when it starts, you have 1.5 seconds before someone scrolls. That's it. And honestly, even that may be a little generous. So you need a hook in the first 1.5 seconds. Then you have around 5 to 6 seconds, and you actually need another hook. Now, when people hear hook, they think of super cheesy, like YouTube clickbait headlines. That's not necessarily what it is. The first hook does need to be a big one. You need to present your idea in a way that makes them want to not scroll to the millions of other people who are also trying to get their attention in the first 1.5 seconds. After that, you get a chance. You get a shot. You're in the draft, at the combine, throwing the ball. This is your opportunity. Things here, you have a few different options. You can continue the first hook and slowly delve into more information, but a lot of creators go with a visual hook for the mid, second, third hooks in a video. That's why you see a lot of, I'm going to go back to face content because it is what I'm more familiar with creating. That's why you'll see a lot of videos of get ready with me's, people putting on makeup. People need something to watch while they're listening to your idea. For a design piece, it can be anything. You don't even necessarily have to be talking about your designs. There's plenty of videos that get a lot of reach of someone doing a BTS video and telling an entirely unrelated story in the background. It's a more refined version of those videos that have an AI read a Reddit question and there's Minecraft gameplay in the background. It just needs to be stimulating to a degree, and there's no coverall answer for what your hook is going to be. Mine are usually videos, especially that I create for work, that hit the 1 million, 2 million, 5 million view benchmark, are because they're ideas that other brands in the space are not presenting. I make videos for gaming specifically, and I dig up development stories from an extremely popular game from 15 years ago, which is naturally interesting in and of itself, but then presented in a format where the answer is not given away in the first 3 seconds, but it's obvious that what is going to be delivered is interesting. So we did one for 2011's Arkham Asylum. I've forgotten the exact details, but for the sake of storytelling, it's Batman's cape in Arkham Asylum, where one guy spent 2 working years on this cape. So the video format, 1.5 second hook, is Batman's cape in Arkham Asylum took 2.5 years to create. If people are interested in Arkham, people are interested in Batman, people are interested in game development, and also I've got multiple audiences on that hook. And then you break down into a little bit more information on the game. If people are curious about that, to kind of build to the second hook. And then you touch on, oh, it was one guy that did this. He didn't trust anybody else to do this work. So it's almost a pyramid structure where you got the little tip that's peeking out of the sand. The audience is your architect. You got the hook, make them brush, then make them dig, and then you deliver the entire video as this pyramid, and they stand back and go, that's good content. I'm glad I stayed. I'm glad I stayed for that. That's good.
It's funny that you say that because I have seen before where someone will post a tutorial or like a how-to on X, and it's, to be frank, it's kind of boring. It doesn't really hook you or anything like that. If you're really interested in, how these tools work or something, you will probably watch it most likely. But then what happens is you'll see aggregation groups who will just go out and they'll download, screen record, whatever, all these people's tutorials, and they'll essentially spice them up and start posting them as hey, this is the tutorial, follow us for more design tricks and stuff like that. And it looks like kind of scummy, to be honest, to a certain extent. But it's the fact that like what they're doing at the end of the day is they're taking these clips that other people are making that are sharing their knowledge, and they're saying, hey, these people aren't presenting it as well. We're just going to go chop it up and present it in a lot better way. And then we're going to build essentially newsletters, subscribers, whatever, off of doing that. And it goes to show that, if you do have good content buried underneath there, even if your specific audience shows up and they're not going to dig out the pyramid or whatever, someone else who does see like, hey, there is something here, they might go dig it out themselves and then try to sell it off as like, this is our pyramid, things like that. So it's interesting. It's a weird bit of cannibalization in a way.
Yeah, if anything, that should prove that the presentation on social is, I'm not going to say it's more important than the content, but it's as important. They're equal levels of validity to that. For the past couple of years, I've adopted the philosophy of a good video on social is not necessarily a good one, if that makes sense. It can be the best content in the world. You could have fully transcribed the Rosetta Stone, but if it is a 60-second monotone video of you reading off the result, no one cares. A good video on social is one that performs, even if technically or visually it's not quite as good as someone else could put together. If yours is more interesting and it keeps more eyes on it, it's a better video. I know plenty of video editors who create the most polished, visually stunning short videos you can think of, but they're boring. So they're not good social videos. Being polished is not necessary. It just needs to keep eyes on it.
Okay, so as we close in on the end of this interview, I do have one last question, Trevor, and that is, I have seen sometimes where a designer does a fantastic job of like visually spicing up their blog posts and then posting it as carousels and so forth on Instagram. But in your opinion, does that work? Is it smart to do that? And then how much text is too much text for this kind of post?
Similar to our short form video talk earlier, there's not really an amount that's too much, excluding obvious levels of libraries condensed onto a 1080 by 1080 image. But you can have 20 words on a graphic, again, if it's interesting. It can't be a bunch of lorem ipsum blabber. Every word that you put on a graphic needs to have a purpose. If you have extraneous adjectives, cut them. Extra little modifier at the end of a sentence, cut it. Articles, cut it. It needs to be the fewest amount of words that can get your idea across. A carousel is the perfect way to do it though, because carousels get a boost in the algorithm. So the way that works is the first time your carousel shows up on a feed, it'll present the first image in the slide. If someone interacts with it, someone engages with it, great. If not, too bad. But it comes around a second time, the Instagram algorithm, instead of presenting the first image in the carousel again, will randomly select a different image from your carousel. That's why every image in your carousel needs to be the same level of visual appeal. You can't have just the cover be, wow, 60-hour animation, and then the rest of them be black text, white background, because that's going to kill your reach when it comes to those second go around. So make sure every slide of your carousel is visually appealing. And then make sure that they're at least somewhat, they fit together. It needs to be the same storyline carrying through your entire carousel. But as far as the overall question of how much text is too much, you hit a point where the algorithm starts thinking it's a book page you're starting to post or something like that. So there's not a word count, but generally less than 30% of the total image space should be text. However you want to present that, you can put as many words in that 30% as you want, but it shouldn't be the entire image or even half of it. Bottom third, top third, middle third, as long as it's a third.
And let's, that makes a little sense, but let's clarify as well. So like we understand what engagement is. We know engagement is things like likes, comments, etc. For carousels, that also count towards scrolling as well. If I scroll to the next slide of carousel, does that count as an engagement in the algorithm?
Not an engagement, but it will count it as an extra impression.
Got it. So if I have five slides on my carousel, and someone goes and looks at all five, it's going to say that I had 5 impressions, even if it could be from one person.
Yes.
Okay, cool. That's good.
Also, I want to be on the topic of metrics. I'm going to kind of tangent real quick because I think this is an important aspect. There's a bunch of metrics for social, and most of them are dog shit. Most of them are worthless. You don't need to worry necessarily about video views, followers, things of that nature. Those are what you'll call a vanity metric. They're useful for influencers who are trying to secure brand deals, who can put that they have 100,000 followers on a collab document. But if you're a small creator, especially, the only thing that matters to you is, in order of importance, pretty much, engagement ratio. That is your biggest thing. You want a decent engagement ratio. It differs by platform. TikTok had the highest. If it's back, great. That may still be true. If not, sorry. Engagement ratio, engagement, shares, comments. Shares on almost every platform, they'll push your content in the algorithm the most. Not only directly to who it's being shared to, but it reads it as more valuable than a like. Likes are not worthless because they are still engagement, but I care much more about content that gets comments and drives conversation than I do likes. You'll see this happens on Instagram and TikTok a lot. Someone will post a video of like a meme template that will go viral. People will go, haha, funny, like, share. You can go to the profile. It doesn't convert to any other action on any of their video. You want engagement that is going to drive people to your profile to check out your other content, which is comments and shares. Don't care how many people follow you, especially with algorithms now where you can have 200 followers but have a 3 million view video. So if you're not getting a lot of likes, but you're getting a lot of comments, as long as it's not, there's exceptions, obviously. Hate comments do drive the algo, but not what you want. Not precisely what you're looking for. It comes back to what we've talked about probably 4 or 5 times today. You need to engage in conversation, or you need to be the one driving conversation. Getting people talking is the primary focus of every piece of social media content, unless you're selling something, is what it comes down to. If you can get people talking, you will do well on social media.
No, in general, I think that was a lot of really great tips and everything. Even if you're not super sure if you want to really push your brand out there, I do recommend it because, we can look at other platforms, for example, we'll talk about like LinkedIn, where it's so saturated with different designers going on there and just trying to find work, showcasing their pieces, things like that. That's important to stand out. And sometimes you're just going to have to put your face out there to stand out and build up that personal branding. And like Trevor said, it is like exposure therapy if you want to show your face, where you just kind of have to do it.
Get on camera. Get on camera.
Okay, everybody, that was Trevor Ford, social media manager. Again, previous work for Twitter and Shift, currently with Valnet, getting 100 million impressions a month for brands he works with. Trevor, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today and sharing your insights.
Thanks for having me today, Grant. It was a pleasure. Hopefully there was some valuable insight I was able to provide. And if my insight was not valuable, don't tell me I don't care. My self-confidence cannot take the hit. But thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. And make sure to find Trevor on LinkedIn at Trevor-S-Ford.